Hello, welcome. So today I want to respond to trolley comments. I just thought we'd have some fun with that. So here on Philosophy All Along, our goal is always to try and get a little bit deeper, look behind kind of the most obvious stuff, the stuff that we always get out of things, and see if we can find something kind of deeper meaning. So the challenge is to make it to the end of the video to see if I've said anything of worth and value. So let's get right to it. This to me is tremendous fun. So I guess I finally hit a point where I have annoyed enough people that they've responded in the comments in ways that suggest like, oh, you know, you're dumb, sir. Okay. Now I do want to add as a caveat. If someone comments, they're like, I think you're wrong because, right? You'll see that I will provide like lengthy responses trying to kind of address the points that they make. And I love to have a conversation about that. And sometimes they'll respond too, and we'll have a bit of a back and forth. And I try and keep things pleasant and fun, even if I often think that they're completely wrong-headed. That's part of a dialogue. So, okay, so let's look at a couple of these. So I did a video not that long ago about how Donald Trump has been complaining and kind of threatening about the flags being at staff at his upcoming inauguration, which again, I will say is such a weird complaint to me, right? Like the flags are at half staff. It has literally nothing to do with him. A former president and lauded, well-respected humanitarian died. This is normal operating procedure for the flags to be at half staff. So, I did this very short video about my thoughts on why this is a silly complaint because Trump goes off and says basically everyone who disagrees and thinks that it's okay that the flag should be at half staff are anti-American, that they hate America. So, okay, so I see this comment come in, like for those of you who don't know, like when you see comments come in, sometimes you only see like just the little top of it and you might think like, oh, this is going to be a pleasant comment. And then you read beyond it and it's like this person just hates you. So this one starts, so this is from Highway Runner 61. Please don't run on the highway. Be safe out there. So Highway Runner says, my thoughts, half staff flags are. And so I just saw that. I was like, oh, this is going to be just like someone has a thought about the flags themselves and what they mean. And they're really going to have something to say here. And they go on to say, staff flags are appropriate because the Democrats not only lost the House, but also the Senate. Exclamation points theirs. I'm sure that they are all in mourning that the Democratic Party has died! Exclamation, 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 and then, ooh, face, right? And what an interesting and I think really tragic thing to say here, right? Okay, so you're like, haha, Democrats, you're dead. Let's say that that's the case, one, very quickly. Let's say that, in fact, that is the case. I think for many MAGA Republicans, that would be like, yes, they're gone. We've erased them out of existence. I am not convinced that the world that you actually want to live in is one where it's a one-party system. Like even I, with my concerns about MAGA, would be very concerned about being like, okay, well, the entire Republican Party has disappeared. Like let's say that happened. So then all of a sudden you have a world in which there's no dialogue or discourse between different points of view. And I find that concerning. The issue, I think, becomes one of, okay, we now have I think really honestly what would happen is that one party would then just divide itself into multiple parts. But okay, so the comment that I have about that comment though is, well, shame on you. Shame on you, because the flags are at half staff because a man died, right? And yeah, okay, granted, he was 100, I guess, yeah. But still, like, he had family, he had friends, and moreover, and I cannot say this enough, right? The guy into his elder years was going around in Habitat for Humanity, helping build homes. And you might be like, well, just so that he was seen. Yes, so that he was seen doing it, so that people would see the kinds of things that a president, just another man, right? Not a god, not a king, should do and could do with his platform, with his visibility, reminding all of us that whilst we're complaining about how difficult our lives are, there are people without homes. So here you are coming at me, right? Basically telling me, ha ha ha, they're dead. How funny. And yet at the same time, someone actually is dead, right? Okay, so that's kind of silly, I think. Okay, so another one, Jay Mason, then a series of letters that I don't entirely understand what's happening. So, okay, so Jay Mason says, it's not Jimmy Carter's day. Now, I think that this comment is really an attempt to respond. And I do appreciate that, right? Like, well, here you are saying this thing about Trump's complaint, but it isn't Jimmy Carter's day. And so there's a reason to have this kind of complaint here. Now, that being said, I think that the response to that, which I believe I have a slightly lengthy one in there, the response to that ends up being that it's not Donald Trump's day either, right? The inauguration isn't his day. It's not his party. It's not his birthday party. It's not a celebration of him or how awesome it is to be him. And we want it to never be that. Whoever it is, whether it's Biden or anybody, because an inauguration really is the moment when this person, just another person who remains in a civilian status, right? The whole goal here is that it's a civilian who's put as the chief of the military, not a military person or someone with some sort of military level power, right? That it is one of us. It's one of the civilians who in fact has that. So this inauguration moment isn't this just, oh, well, look how awesome this person is. So I hear your point, Jay Mason, but I think that it's also a little bit unfair to say, well, it's not Jimmy Carter's day. Well, but it isn't Trump's either. And Trump's kind of disrespecting the office and the oath that he's taking by making it about him, as opposed to making it about the Constitution and about the American people. Okay, so Robert Graybeard here responded, illness, ... and then like one of those happy smiley faces, not like just the smiley, but like the one where it smiles, where it gets in the eyes. And I'm not entirely sure what that was intended to mean, so I don't really have a whole lot of comment there, other than I think the person might be saying like, you're ill, sir, speaker at me, you're ill, there's something wrong with you, and which connects to another comment that I'm going to hit on real quick. But I like to take this comment as meaning that we're all kind of ill, that these discourses at the end of the day are becoming increasingly unhealthy. And I think that that's a fair concern, if that's where you're going, Robert Graybeard. Okay, so then one of my favorites, Daniel Boris 6036 says, wow, TDS at its best. So for those of you who don't know, TDS is Trump derangement syndrome, right? So it is this kind of fake illness made up by the MAGA faithful, where they basically are saying that anyone who has a concern about Trump, that goes out there and says like, listen, I'm worried that he said or done this, right? So there's a map of a hurricane projected path, and I see that some of it has been drawn on with a Sharpie. Is he making up, is Donald Trump, president of the United States at the time, making up the path for the hurricane because he disagrees where the National Weather Service says it's going to go? And you go, that's Trump derangement syndrome. You're a bunch of crazy conspiracy theorists. What I love about this comment so much is it completely ignores the fact that you, MAGA faithful, are the ones who go around accusing people of making up fake illnesses, i.e. COVID, right? I just saw this thing about how, and this is not funny in the slightest, but there's been like some mutant cases of bird flu, and all of a sudden I see out there on Twitter people going, see, the CDC is making illnesses to try and take Trump down. It's another pandemic that they're going to use to try and harm the president. And so there you all are, actually accusing people of making up illnesses when you make up illnesses. And I don't want to say you make up illnesses too, because I like to think that the CDC is not making it up. In fact, actually, I know a few people who died of COVID, so now I've kind of depressed myself. But in a lighter note, like, you go around calling everyone who disagrees with you sick. And I find that concerning, because what does that really mean? It means you don't actually have an argument, right? It means you don't have reasons. You don't have an ability to address it yourself. And so you're just gonna be like, you're crazy, you're insane. It's like, drivers, right? We're just screaming at each other as we cut each other off and flicking each other off. And which brings me to a brief thesis of mine, which is that I think generally people who put trollish comments in are also probably bad drivers. I'm just going to put that out there. And what I mean by that, kind of like violent drivers, the people who, if you're going the speed limit, they go and they cut you off and they're screaming at you. And then but then when they want to go slower, or they have a turn or something like that, then they're getting mad at you for they're like, oh, those crazy tailgaters, right? Like that. In other words, no matter what you do, they're always the one in the right, and they lack the ability to recognize, oh, like maybe this person is going a little slower because they don't know where they are, or they're concerned about following the law, or maybe they're kind of speeding or in a rush because they're having a real problem getting to work on time this day, or something like that. Like it's always kind of about themselves. And so yeah, that's my thesis. By all means, correct me in the comments. I love it. So let me just hit one final one real quick here. So I did a video not long ago that is not super well watched. So I do love that it has a comment on it, where I talk briefly about why I think that Donald Trump is now far less likely to try and win a third term, right? And because there is this real concern here. And without going into details about it, the general argument against what I'm saying there is it's unconstitutional. You cannot run for a third term. It's clearly written there in the Constitution. And so that any reply that I'm making suggesting that he might try it's kind of bait. It's kind of like a fear mongering. And I think that's a very, very fair criticism, right? Like, are you just trying to bait people to get views? And I respect that concern. That being said, it's really important to note that for all the screaming that people are doing, saying, oh, he couldn't, it's impossible, so you're just trying to fearmonger because it's unconstitutional. There's an amendment that prevents him from so doing. Literally, right now, like as we speak, Donald Trump has been posting and talking about not repealing the 14th Amendment, but simply acting against it, right? The 14th Amendment is birthright citizenship. Without getting into details of what you think about it, what I mean is he's not posting, we're going to go back to Congress and we're going to go through the incredibly long and difficult process of repealing that amendment so that we can undo birthright citizenship. He's literally just going out there saying, right, we're going to deny birthright citizenship. So the only way to do that is by ignoring the amendment or trying to find wiggle room in the amendment. So if I say, well, he might be willing to try and find wiggle room in an amendment that prevents him from being president again in a third term, it's not like he isn't willing to do that with other amendments. So what are you talking about? Okay, so anyways, so there's that whole concern. And then I have Dan Code the One. Now, I assume that's a Matrix reference. I can't help but think it. Because, the coding comment, but also the one, like I might just be showing my age because the film came out in 1999. So Dan, I guess you and I are both old. But also, like, shame on you for thinking that you're Neo, right? Like, come on, So he says, just try to find a way of making your videos interesting instead of resorting to provoking MAGA. And I love that because, it really is a genuine struggle to try and make videos interesting, where what I really want to do is like dive deeply into like literature and film and like try and find little interesting, interpretations of them. And let's be honest, like what's far more I was at the dentist's office the other day and they had like America's Funniest home videos, and like that's super entertaining. There's a reason why they don't have me up there. Like you're getting your root canal and you're listening to this guy like talk to you about politics or why the Lord of the Rings can be compared to Moby Dick. Like it would just make it so much worse, right? So I hear that, I hear this concern, well, like this is uninteresting. But I do want to say, I think that there's a tremendous danger there in this idea that, particularly when it comes to these political videos, like if you came at me about like my literary stuff or just general philosophy being uninteresting, I think that's particularly fair. But my job is not to make the politics of our nation interesting. If anything, my worry is that there's this great quote from Juvenal, a poet from ancient Rome, where he talks about panem et circuses, right? Bread and circuses. And he points out that as long as people have bread and circuses, food and entertainment, you can take away all their civil liberties and they will just like continue shoveling their faces whilst watching their entertainments, not notice, not care, and let you do it. And then by the time they do notice, it's too late. So to you, Dan, I reply that no, I'm not going to try and be more interesting. I'm going to try and be honest. And I think honesty is not, if someone tells you, I'm telling you the truth and these are just the facts, that's always dangerous. I can't say that. I don't know the truth. I don't have magic access to it. All I have is my own incredibly limited perspective. And I'm going to try and put it out here and then hope that you respond. And if your response proves me wrong, I will happily acknowledge it, because there's a lot of things that I would like to be wrong about. And one of those things happens to be, I would very much like to be wrong about the worry that the United States is becoming increasingly less democratic, that it is becoming increasingly more governed by just wealthy people, while the middle class, but particularly the poor, have less and less and less voice and less control over their lives and are just kind of being used by the wealthy, i.e. people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, to accomplish not just their own political ends, but their own monetary ends, just as part of their machine. I am incredibly excited at the possibility that I could be wrong, that our country is becoming more selfish, more self-focused, and while it's doing that, actually giving up its own ability to self-govern. So if anyone out there can prove to me that we're actually entering a more Star Trek type world in which we are engaging in more art and thought and care and exploration, that's great. But until then, I'm going to continue to put out boring videos where I try and see this other side of the argument and present it to you so that we can all have a conversation about it. And hopefully we can make a difference, right? That we can vote and speak with more information at our hands. So to those of you who are honestly putting out comments, often in disagreement with me, thank you. Thank you for trying to engage the discourse, and thank you for trying to help educate me. I appreciate you. And for those of you who are going to comment on this, but haven't actually watched it, shame on you, right? Because it's disingenuous, right? You haven't seen it, but you're telling people your opinion about it. So you're helping them become more ignorant. Instead, watch it, disagree, take me down. Love that. All right. So with that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And please do, if you've managed to survive this little rant, like and subscribe and comment. So, all right. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.